Hola, film fans. It's Baron and the Doc here with the next episode of That Reminds Me Of. This episode we are talking about Standard, or in Spanish, Estándar.
Very nice, Doc. This is the show, if you haven't seen us before, where we look at films, we talk about them, we talk about the films we are reminded of when we watch the film, thus the name of the show. And just a warning for everyone, it's very spoiler heavy. So if you are worried about that, now's your time to leave. Otherwise, watch on.
You probably pronounce it more like Estándar, don't you, in Spanish?
That's right.
It's my gringo accent.
Yeah, we're not going to get any of it right. And all of the names of all of the wonderful people in this film, we are probably going to murder as well. Just a heads up for everyone watching.
Yeah, that's what we do.
That's what we do.
This film, I'm going to just open really confidently and say that I frigging loved this film.
I knew you would love this film. I had a great feeling that this is a Doc film through and through. And
it is.
I got to say, I enjoyed this film, but I didn't love it like I knew you would. However, there was a lot to love in this film.
Yeah. Look, I probably, if you told me what the flaws were, could probably see them, but they didn't jump out at me. I was only just loving what I loved. So I reckon let's just jump into this, baby.
Let's jump into it. And I think we should start with a synopsis for all the people who know nothing about this film. And Doc, it's your turn. Take it away.
Great. Well, it's about this chap called Thomas.
Let's
say it's Thomas, but for the sake of our sanity, let's just say Thomas for the rest of the episode.
Sounds good.
Because we're Aussies. So Thomas works in a supermarket stacking shelves. He loves his job because he's an oddball, obsessive compulsive oddball. And he gets a kick out of keeping all the shelves in order and all that sort of stuff. So we're introduced to Thomas first, and then the cast of characters in the supermarket. So there's the fishmonger, there's the butcher who has this sort of sexual relationship with the cuts of meat. There's the gossipy checkout chick, and then there's Laura, who is another checkout chick, but she also happens to be the daughter of the owner of the supermarket. So that's really where everything happens.
Yep.
And the inciting incident in the whole show is that Laura goes missing, and then Thomas stumbles upon her in the freezer. So she's seemingly dead in the freezer. He makes this ridiculous decision to then take her home, almost kidnap the dead body, and puts a blanket over her. Gets really creepy with her, really.
Quick sidetrack. Do you think
Yes.
he did that because he wanted to clean the place up? Like he couldn't handle the thought of having a frozen body in the freezer of his perfectly ordered supermarket?
Well, you're getting way ahead of the game, but
Okay.
I think so.
Craziness. All right, continue.
It is utter craziness. But he does. He takes her home, and then eventually she wakes up, and you see little signals that she's going to wake up, like her fingers moving and stuff. So you know it's coming. Then she wakes up. He convinces her that they're in a relationship, and that she's just lost her memory, and then she believes it, sort of, and then they go ahead trying to solve the mystery of who it was that tried to kill her, and that then is the crux of the plot, and they ultimately find out who kills her, and I think we can go back and talk about the rest of it from here.
It's full of very strange choices, this film, the whole way through, because they're a particularly odd group of people, all of them. They're in that very European style that you catch in some European films, where all the characters are like bigger than life. They're complete oddballs, and maybe in little villages in Spain, totally normal to come across like a whole bunch of these people in a supermarket. I don't know, but I've seen this before in other films, so it was interesting. And because they're such oddballs, the decisions they make are endlessly entertaining. Like they're just like nothing you would normally see in films that you're used to.
And you're suggesting that's typical of people in, small towns in Spain.
I think so.
That's what they're like.
That's the only conclusion I can make from this.
Not that they're great.
Any other.
Not that they're great creative filmmakers with a highly charged imagination. Just that's what people are like in Spain.
They literally walked into a supermarket and looked around and went, "Yep, write that guy down. He's a character."
Yeah. Geez, they're colourful characters though. Like, what did you said you enjoyed parts of it? Name something that you enjoyed for starters.
Okay. I enjoyed immensely the oddball Thomas, the main character. He looks like, I mentioned, I texted you this just after I watched it. Old male Greta Thunberg. Like
that's right.
That's what he's just got this thing about his face. And that aside, he's sort of going around really busy doing odd little things. And he's kind of the perfect character to put in the middle of a murder mystery because he has all of the attributes of like a Sherlock Holmes in a way, except he's just nothing like Sherlock Holmes. He looks at all the details, but and all the little things and tries to put together the case completely off the mark most of the time. But it's just, and he was such an entertaining character that I went for a lot of the ride simply because of him.
He was compelling, wasn't he? And just so fun to bloody watch. And you're right, he's like a detective because he's by nature keeping everything in order and taking notes of everything. It's a perfect, just that starting point from the filmmakers is really, really clever to use that character.
And I also love that, therefore, some of the ways he goes about solving the mystery are all very specific to him. Like he's, for some reason, kept a little journal full of, all of the habits of every customer that walks through the door. For instance, one of the guys only ever grabs the third product back on the shelf. And on this certain day, he seemed flustered and he grabbed the first product. So he must be, like right at the top of our suspect list. Things like that, It's just good fun.
Yeah, he makes, between he and Laura, they determine what is required to solve the case. Okay, who is acting strangely? He works that out, and then that equals that person's guilty. So he has this really straight ahead way of interpreting things, which is so funny.
Absolutely. You mentioned Laura. I liked Laura as well. I thought the two of them had a good chemistry. And I kind of thought of Laura as a little bit like a Spanish Anna Kendrick. She just had like that same energy to her and a great smile. Like every time she lit up, she drew you in, like you wanted to see what she was going to do next. So those two at the center of this, I really enjoyed. And I thought that there was some nuance to their characters.
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that some of the others, well, I'm not going to take it away from you. You say it.
You've got it bang on, Doc. Like the rest of the characters were just ridiculous. They were ridiculous. And I kind of went for the ride, but at the same time, it felt a little cheesy and I was struggling with some of those characters. I just wanted a bit more nuance to them.
No, well, you're spot on because they were, every single one was ridiculous. Every situation they were in ridiculous. When there was a lineup of them, they were all ridiculous. Every plot point was ridiculous. So there is no saving grace for taking any of those seriously, really.
True.
But there was so much humanity in those two main ones that drove the film, and I thought the others were just meant to be caricatures. So I don't know, right. I just didn't care about that.
I think you're right. I think it's something that it would be very difficult to get away with for like a Hollywood anything, any sort of Hollywood production. I think people wouldn't be very forgiving of that. It feels like a European sensibility to me, like a willingness to have these over the top characters that are sort of caricatures of all these people you've kind of met around town, that, I don't know, allow your story to I don't know. Maybe it focuses you in on something more important at the center of it. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out still.
Well, I think firstly you're right, it's very European. And the Europeans, let's face it, are more over the top than us in Australia. We're fairly reserved. They can be quite flamboyant and crazy characters. So
maybe that's what it is. Maybe we're just, a little bit sort of reserved and just cringe a bit at that stuff, whereas they have no problems with it.
Yeah, like even for them, I think the characters are ridiculous. But
yeah. I mean, down to the fact that the bad guy, early on, you're going, the guy who turns out to be the bad guy, spoiler alert for everyone, he is the fishmonger, right? And he's got these terrible teeth, like just the worst, but obviously like make-upped teeth. Just they're yellow and stained and there's green bits in the gaps. And otherwise, he's a pretty good-looking dude, right? And you're like, what's with the teeth? Why? And then you think, wait a second, this guy's going to end up being the bad guy, and we're going to be okay with that because he's got bad teeth.
Did you pick him as the bad guy early?
No, but I was thinking something's up with this guy's teeth. And then when you get to that part, then I couldn't stop thinking about the teeth, It's funny.
Yeah. Look, what I really liked, I'm interested in your opinion, is just the meticulous nature of the meticulous way they had attention to detail in this film. Like everything just seems so well planned and orchestrated and executed.
Yeah.
So
totally
things
agree.
You do. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I placed it down. I don't know what your take on this is, but I sort of placed it down to the OCD nature of our main character. It's almost like the entire world takes on that status or that kind of reflection of his inner world, because everything is perfectly symmetrical. He's got an amazing apartment, like that whole record room that he has with all the music records stacked up that is yellow, I think, in the day and then turns pink at night when you turn the light on.
You're
it's
right.
incredible. Yeah. Like what a cool set. And just his leather couches and that whole set is actually pretty amazing. I think a lot of time and effort went into the set design for this film, which is what you're picking up. It's great.
Yeah,
really
the set design was going to be one of my highlights. I thought it was just impeccable, just flawless throughout. Like you've got two main locations, one being the supermarket, the other being his apartment, and both were just designed to within an inch of their lives, and it fits perfectly with his character because that's exactly what he would do.
Yeah. If anything, I felt like parts of the apartment were a little too tasteful for him because there was nothing else about him that was that cool, but that was a cool apartment.
Yeah, true. And how's just the habits and that he goes through during the day. I know some of these things are cliched, but when you're seeing him brushing his teeth and doing all those daily rituals, the little details where he picks up a glass and puts it down and then like taps it or something to put it into the right spot.
Yes.
Or when he's gargling and you can tell that he's counting at the same time.
Every time he looks at the watch while he's doing it. He's got his 5 razors all lined up on one side and the different brushes on the other side, or combs. It's pretty great. And that's the sorts of details. If you're going to get into OCD stuff, like that's what you need, right? Like that kind of makes it that level of detail, but they did it well.
I could keep going on about great things. Anything that was disappointing, I don't think you're quite as sold as me. So anything that you want to have a crack at?
I found the first, I reckon, 20 minutes of this to be a bit hard to watch. I think it was because the filmmakers seemed so enamored by their characters and these caricatures that they spent a lot of time, one at a time, giving them little funny setups and ways of bouncing off each other and sort of bouncing the characters against each other and to show how different they are. And because they were such caricatures, I just didn't really care for it. It just didn't grab me. It wasn't until that kind of 20-25 minute mark in where the body rocks up that I was like, okay, this is interesting now. And I think you're right. It's that strange decision of Thomas to take the body out, wrap her up, and take her home. Like that's what just flips the whole story. And it goes from being a fairly bland little, quaint village story to just like, oh, okay, now we've got a murder mystery on our hands. Fun.
He takes her home. Like, what sort of lunatic does that? That's more ridiculous than our Murder Berry Win episode.
Absolutely. I expected, also because he lays her out on a table.
Yes.
And my mind started going, wait a second, is he about to get really strange? Like, is this about to get kinky in a bad way? You know what I mean? But no, of course not.
It gets kinky in a good way instead, where
right.
he just conducts his orchestra.
That's right.
With her there. Yeah, he's an oddball.
Yeah, so I mean that first bit of the film was a bit hard on me. I think I struggled with it, but once the story took off, it was pretty good. Was there anything for you that you thought wasn't amazing or could use work?
I agree with you on those characters, especially early on. Like, I didn't really care or find them particularly funny. The outrageousness of the fishmonger or the sexy butcher or any of that. But
sexy butcher.
But who wasn't explored quite enough, I didn't think, relative to the other ones.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
But I forgave it for just what I felt was just wonderful filmmaking choices. The angles they used, just everything seemed to be thought out. There was when you had the shop staff talking to the customers, it was like really in your face camera, and I don't know, that was interesting and novel enough for me to just enjoy thinking what choices lay behind the whole thing.
It was really well made, and a lot of that stuff is pretty flawless. Like, it's hard to pick holes in the execution of it. Definitely. There was a couple funny moments that stood out to me. One of them was just the subtitles. There was one part in there where the guy, one of the characters says amigo, I think.
Yeah.
And the subtitle choice was mate. And I just thought that was hilarious, being an Australian, and just like, it was so unexpected. Yeah. So I'm guessing they've got like an Englishman doing the subtitles potentially. Another great one, there's this issue with the cornflakes that comes up in the film, and like, it's pretty much the undoing of Thomas is that he cannot leave the cornflakes. Like, he knocks them over.
He has to come back.
He has to come back. Yeah, and he doesn't even knock he just like, the box is just slightly off, and that's enough for him to almost like be completely undone. It was great.
That's funny.
It's funny.
Honestly, that is really funny.
Yeah.
He's combing his hair with two combs at once. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right. One for one side of the part and one for the other side. That's classic. The best moment of the film.
Yeah.
Got the best moment of the film for you.
Please, yes.
Okay, this is the bit where I actually laughed out loud and just thought that is gold. So there's a moment where the police get trapped inside like the back part of the alleyway behind the supermarket because of the timing of like the garbage truck, which they cleverly set up in the first act and pays off in the last act. Very good filmmaking right there.
Yeah.
And they're stuck, and meanwhile Thomas and Laura, I think, are trying to escape. And in slow motion, with dramatic orchestral music going off, the sheriff, who is just the quirkiest, weirdest dude you've ever seen.
He's funny.
With one glass eye poking off to one side and this creepy little voice. He's getting out of the sheriff car in slow motion while this music's going off. And they play it for like so long. Because it's such a great shot. Anyway, that was the moment that kind of had me.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that reminded me of Antichrist.
Oh, that's good.
In the slow motion scene, there's a couple, isn't there? Some slow motion scenes in Antichrist.
Weird animal slow motion scenes.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same expression on his face as well.
No, I jumped for joy at that same moment. That was my favorite too.
Yeah. Classic.
Because it was set up, and you didn't think that was a setup earlier on, did you?
No.
And then it paid off, and that's so beautiful when that happens.
Yeah.
Even though everything around the storyline, leading up to that is utterly ridiculous, that was just beautiful, and that gave him the opportunity to get away.
That sheriff, what a character! Where do you even find a guy like that?
In
a little village in Spain.
In a little village in Spain. He had a great quote. He described himself, I think, as a calm man, but one capable of doing anything for his true vocation and only love, fishing. I think that's close to a direct quote.
Yeah, that sounds right. That's classic.
With the slow motion talk, you mentioned the music, and I thought the score was an absolute highlight of this. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I agree totally. I thought the use of the that orchestral music is great. It really lifts the whole thing. And I can't remember the other music that's in it, honestly. All I can remember is that music.
Yeah, there's a lot of other music and music from memory that's used in different ways. And again, I'm going to get ahead of myself and go to the reminds me's, but at several moments, there's whole sequences that are basically shot like a silent film, where you've got the old style silent film type music alongside his sort of theatrics, Mr. Bean style, no dialogue for long periods on end.
Yeah.
Style sequences.
That's right.
And they are really, really well executed, I think. And it's both the acting, the choreography and the score.
I think while I went for the ride for most of these reasons that we're talking about, probably the series of choices got to me a little bit as well. Just that it seemed nonsensical, a lot of it. And also the fact that Laura would go along with most of it just seemed really hard to believe. I kind of enjoyed that, and I just also was annoyed by it. I could go both ways with that. It's because she's decided for some reason to follow along with Thomas's plan, which is to not reveal that she's actually alive while everyone's assumed that she's dead or missing. I think they think she's missing.
Yes, they do.
Because he wants to find out who her killer is. And really, actually, what he wants is to keep her around in his house for longer because he's enamored by her. And she's, for some reason, going along with that. And I just, that one I found a little bit of a stretch.
Well, it is a stretch, and it's completely ridiculous. As I think when a film is hitting all the right notes and getting the laughs and just making you happy, I don't mind about any of those things. Once you realise that anything is up for grabs and that we're not living in the real world here, then it's just a rollicking good ride.
Look, I think you've got the right take on it. That's the way to look at it. You can't take it too seriously. It's not intended to be taken too seriously. And in fact, you should probably enjoy the things we've talked about, the solid filmmaking and that kind of relationship at the center of it all, because that's what it's all about.
How about what it reminded you of? Or no, before we get to that, how about the ending? The ending ended on the cliffhanger of sorts.
Run us through it again, because
okay,
the details, are they clear in your head?
They're clear in my head.
Okay.
He has been found out as some sort of a psychopath, and he's in jail. So they've found him out. She now is running off on her own, and she gets to a fork in the road, one way being, I guess, a future just free and easy, and the other way there's a sign to the penitentiary where he is. And she's there, and she's clearly making the decision: does she go and get him, or does she go off Thelma and Louise style and go off her own cliff?
Classic.
So yeah, that's how it ends, and it doesn't solve it for you. It just leaves it open. I love that.
I like that too. I think that's in keeping with the rest of the film as well, because probably that decision is pretty ridiculous in its own right, but is also fun for what these two have come. Like what their relationship has come to be. So what were you reminded of, Doc? You were asking me, but now I'm asking you back.
Well, I've said silent film, so I don't even want to pick any out, but just generally the silent film oeuvre. Hey, how you say it? Oeuvre?
I think so.
Yeah, French. I'm very multilingual.
Estándar.
Estándar. So there's that one. And also, just as a broad sweeping one, any of these dead body, what do you do with it type movies that we've discussed before.
Yeah.
It's the same thing again as again Murderberry Win that was also in the festival.
We've briefly talked about the OCD bathroom stuff. That reminds me straight away of As Good as It Gets. Like, I can't not think of that film. And Jack Nicholson with his soap routine and the locking the door over and over again, and not stepping on cracks because he will break his mother's back, and all that, ridiculousness. Like, that plays, obviously the Jack Nicholson one has its own nuance, but this one, I think all of those little things work pretty well and they're fun.
I think that's a good one. Probably my main movie that it reminded me of was A Clockwork Orange.
Oh, okay.
Well, I thought a lot of the vividness, like Clockwork Orange is very hyper real, and with big colors, big characters, so that was consistent across both. And you add in the use of the classical music, the score through it, and many times I just felt I'm in the Clockwork Orange universe. And you've
Brilliant.
got a sort of semi-psychopath in there as well, who's getting off on his classical music while he's got this woman who he thinks is dead in front of him.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, creepy classical craziness.
I love it. I had Delicatessen in mind.
I haven't seen Delicatessen. It's on the list.
Yeah, it's a weirder film. It's got troglodytes and weird shit going on, but it also in its own way has those larger than life characters and that European vibe going on. So I was thinking about that a little bit, and on another one that's less quirky but has that small European town thing happening is Chocolat. I thought of that a little bit as well.
Interesting.
Just in terms of like characters that bump into each other, and the fate of them is all kind of intertwined on some level.
Yeah. So not quite as ludicrous as this one, but but similar. Yeah,
but still a little bit ludicrous. Like, it has that flavor to it still.
Yeah. True.
But it's a beautiful film.
It's
a beautiful film.
It is,
Love
mate.
it.
It's almost a cliche to say, but the last one I'll mention is Wes Anderson. I feel that whenever a film is colourful and vivid, and fast paced
and symmetrical,
yes, true, and beautifully designed.
Yep.
You think of Wes Anderson. So
absolutely,
I'm sure we'll use Wes as a reference for other films as we get along, but I think it's worth mentioning.
I wrote Wes Anderson down as well because I was thinking the same thing, particularly the pastel colouring and the symmetry of it all. It felt very intentional and very Wes Anderson in its approach.
I think we've covered it. I could talk for hours about various quotes and everything that I loved, but I think people will start to get bored. Do you have any other final thoughts?
Not really, other than Austin Film Festival is delivering more surprises, and we've seen, what are we up to now? 4 films? I don't know.
Yeah, this is our 4th.
Yeah, and they've all been really different from each other, and generally they've been quite indie and low budget. This one doesn't have that feeling. It feels like there's more money behind it, but at the same time is quite unusual and indie in its own way. So it's been quite a ride. I've been enjoying the variety.
Yeah, this one surprised me. It's kind of perhaps because it's an overseas film for the American audience.
Yeah.
So it just had a different vibe about it, and I really enjoyed that too.
Absolutely. And I'm maintaining that I think that the Austin Film Festival selection panel or judges are into films that are entertaining and have a little bit of a crowd pleaser element to them. Whether they're in, like, they're not I'm not talking like big budget Hollywood crowd pleasing, but they're not like hard to watch, head scratchers. They're quite easy to sit back and absorb. At least the ones that we've seen so far have all kind of been those sorts of films.
Well, let's see what comes up. We're probably going to be surprised again.
Yeah.
I don't think the next one will surprise us in that way. The next one is Reboot Camp. So that's our next episode. Based on the trailer, I don't think you'd expect some really what do you say?
Far from it. It's not a deep thinking person's film by the looks of it.
That's right, but it looks like fun, and we'll talk about it next. So stay tuned.
Absolutely. See you later, Doc.
See you, Baron.